So a couple nights ago on stream, I was with Ryan Levine, and he basically went through a big list of all the sort of semi-relevant decks coming up in this format, and we kind of just talked about it for a while. And he gave his thoughts, and there's the extended version which you can find on my Twitch channel. But for this video, I just made it like a supercut version, just to get the absolute bare minimum and the very, very important points that he's made. So I hope you enjoy, but also let me know some feedback for how you what do you think about this video, this kind of style of video, and just having someone else like give very sort of like bullet pointed thoughts on the decks for the format. So yeah, let me know what you think down below, and I will see you next time. Enjoy.
For like weeks leading up to the list, when everyone's like, oh, is there going to be a list? Like, what's going to happen? I was like, all right, if we do what Japan did and put Resort to 1, the deck is definitely unplayable. There's no way. If they put Resort to 1, I'll just move on to something else. Then I saw the list and they put Resort to 1, and I was like, all right, that's it. Like, Spyral had its run, that's fine. And then I read the rest of the list, and they also killed every other viable deck. So I was like, okay, maybe there's still something here. I think like Resort going to 1, it obviously cuts the deck's consistency. That's obviously the biggest part of cuts the deck's consistency. But also it limits the power of Master Plan, which Master Plan can't activate unless you have both a Resort in deck and a Spiral Monster in deck. So if you draw your one Resort to actually give you your consistency, then Master Plan can't really do its thing. I don't think it's possible for it to be as dominant as it has been, but I'm very hesitant to say it's like unplayable. I think like the core of the deck is still there, and there are probably some ways to make it acceptable. I don't think it's a deck that's gonna like win the next YCS or anything like that, but I think it's still viable if the format actually slows down as much as everyone thinks it will. But I don't think you can really play Spyral as a control deck necessarily. Like Rescue is actually really good for that, but with only one Resort, Master Plan is a lot worse. So like you're not searching Rescue as often because you're probably not summoning it as often. It's like it's really tough. I don't think you can just you can just put a bunch of traps. I don't think you can just put 10 traps in Spiral and call it a day. Like that's not really what's going to happen. I actually think Joker getting banned like doesn't matter. That was a card, and I'm going to say it was unsearchable. I know it wasn't unsearchable. I know that like a couple cards did actually search it, but like Joker was only good if like you started your turn with normal summon Joker, like search Wisdom Eye, and that was like how your combo started. If you like made Time Star Magician and search Joker for like next turn, like that, just Joker did that. Joker didn't matter. Like that's not how that. It wasn't good. Double Iris getting banned is crazy. That was such a good hit. I'm actually very surprised that the hit on Pendulum was that good. Electromite and like just Electromite popping Double Iris to get your Star Pendulum Graph, and then your Star Pendulum Graph searching like another Double Iris, or Astrograph getting another Double Iris and then popping that and getting your trap. It was like Double Iris just made everything so much easier. And then like you keep Electromite up, and then your trap pops your third Double Iris, and then you get to draw another card off Electromite and search another card. It was just insane. You just start your turn, even if they evenly match you, you just start your turn with like 7 cards in hand for next turn. It was crazy. I think Double Iris might have been like the best card they could have hit. I think it was the correct hit, which is, I think, like, unfortunately, I think there have been a lot of times recently when like Konami hasn't quite hit the right cards, but I think Double Iris was like the perfect card to hit there. Like, the deck is still like powerful. It just lost the like ridiculous cards. Double Iris with Electromite Legal was like not close to being fair. That card was insane. So now that Double Iris is banned, it opens up space to like rethink how you build your deck, which I think makes for the best changes in formats, is when you have to rethink like the entire like design of your deck. Demise is still at 3, like Duality Desire is still at 3, like Diagram still at 3, Terraforming still at 3. The search power of the deck is still there, but I was not really a fan. Like Dynamite was actually one of my favorite cards. Like that card is just, but I think it's also kind of like justified its ban. Like that card is like ridiculous. And I think it's really hard to make Draco function without Dynamite, but like a bunch of decks just got hit, it's definitely possible Draco comes back, and then I just think it's like people have to find new cards to fit the roles of cards that got hit, or they have to completely rethink how the deck is built, like as if those cards never existed. So like if Dynamite never existed, how would we have built Draco? And I think that's the question that people kind of have to ask and figure out. The deck is still powerful. Masterpiece is still powerful. Like in an undefined format like this one, it's Masterpiece is such a great card because when people don't know what they're going to play against, it's less likely they'll have very specific cards to be Masterpiece. And Masterpiece is one of those cards that like kind of demands a specific answer because it's protected from so many different things. So I think it's definitely possible that Draco like comes back. So Invoked is a deck that never really took off in the TCG, but again, in an undefined format, like Invocation is still a ridiculous card. Like it banishes cards from your opponent's graveyard to make your own fusions, and maybe your opponent will be playing some weird deck that like that like banishing cards from their graveyard like really matters. So Invoked is just one of those decks where like what you do actually depends so much on what your opponent is doing. Because it's like not really worth it to like fuse out of your own hand. It's always so much better to fuse out of your opponent's graveyard that it really depends on what your opponent's doing to see like how good your deck is going to be. Evenly matched. That's I think like a bunch of back row came back. Like Torrential at 3 actually doesn't matter for Paleo because like what are you're gonna torrential them and be like chain your Paleo trap and then your trap just dies. Like what are you actually doing with 3 torrentials? Like Torrential wipes your own Paleos and they all get banished. So like that's just. But Bottomless at 3 is cool, I guess. That is like another like usable trap that Paleo can potentially play. But I think the problem with Paleo and all back row decks in general right now is like Evenly Matched, Zaphion, Denko, Holding Legs, Hey Trunade, like Red Reboo's coming out soon, like Twin Twister. There are just so many cards that just get rid of back row so easily that it's really, really tough to be playing a back row deck. Like, it's so tough to play a back row deck. If you're just playing your back row deck and your opponent goes, main phase, yeah, okay. Battle phase, you're like, Like, if you don't open with Toad, if your opponent says battle phase, you get really sad. But, like, that's just, that's kind of it. That deck just didn't get hit at all, and I think it's like still probably awful. I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I don't think Trickstar was like actually ever really a good deck, but that's probably just because like I just played Spyral for 5 months or whatever. So like, summon tough. Okay, your whole deck is invalidated. But like Trickstar, I just don't. Trickstar just doesn't do anything. Like it's so I don't know how to. It's like, it's such a weird deck to evaluate because it just doesn't do anything. Like, Candina get Reincarnation, like, doesn't do anything. Like Candina get Licorice, bounce it back, oh, you get burned for 400. Like, that doesn't do anything. The way Trickstar wins is, like, not from the Trickstar card. It's from, like, all the other cards they play. So, like, Trickstar wins from, like, Scapegoat. Like, that's how they actually win. So, like, if Trickstar, and in a really undefined format, it's really hard to find the cards that let you win, if that makes sense. Like, it's really hard to find the blowout cards. Like, Droll Reincarnation is still a thing, but, like, Droll Reincarnation doesn't actually happen as often as people say it does, or think it does. Like, it just, opening with 2 Reincarnations in Droll, like, isn't that common. I think Trickstar is definitely still like a contender, but I'm really, really hesitant to say just because Trickstar didn't get hit and it was a very good deck that it will just automatically be the best deck. I don't think that's true. Like, what other decks could, if your opponent's playing Invoked and just like summon like an Invoked monster like that has more attack than 1800, which is like all of them, then like, oh man, your opponent summons like a True Draco monster and you're playing your Trickstar deck. You're like, oh man. Your opponent summons like an ABC card, just like summon A. You're like, oh man, like in a format that's so like open, there are just too many things that just win that just beat you and you can't really interact with that. Like, maybe we're in a format where like 8 hand traps just don't do anything anymore. So I think it's really hard. I think Trickstar is really hard to play in a format that isn't defined because you don't know what cards are going to be really good against your opponent. And I think Lightsworn is like one of those like fair decks that makes like level 8 synchros and like links and like seeds, where now your cards can actually on your first try interact with all of your opponent's cards. You don't have to get rid of their resort first and then like their last resort and then deal with their monster. Your cards can actually just deal with your opponent's cards now because there aren't these like 3 layers of protection anymore. Like Snow is a card again. Like Snow just did not have an effect for the past 4 months because Resort existed. So, and Snow is an insane card, and I guess like Snow being relevant again or being like able to be used again, I think will actually make Lightsworn pretty good. I'm expecting big things from like a zombie Lightsworn deck, to be honest. Like after I've just like talked through all of it, like Brilliant Fusion is still at 3, like that's kind of crazy. They're probably going to be pretty good. I'm going to say pretty similarly to Lightsworn, like Snow is good again. Like Snow like Snow has an effect again. Because Resort is like not really in the format anymore. So that's going to be good for them. I'm not really sure what Infernoid decks look like right now. Level Leader got banned. Level Leader actually would have been really cool in Infernoid, but that's gone now. Like summon Decatron, like send something. Now Decatron's like level 11, and then you have a Level Leader, and then you just, make 38 Link monsters. Like I think a lot of the graveyard, like mill decks, have some room to breathe now, because I think they've kind of been the more like I guess the more fair isn't really a good way to say it, but the decks that like it was really hard to be a deck that relied on Snow when you couldn't target any of your opponent's monsters. So, yeah, Feast and Imagination are really good. Yeah, I think Inferno actually has a lot of tools going forward. Demise decks in general are really hard to justify right now because Evenly is still at 3. Like, and it's not like summoning T King setting 3 or 4 or setting 3 and then demising like T King set 5 when they don't draw even matched is still not a 100% win. Like if it boiled down to like you win every single game your opponent doesn't have evenly matched, like even then the deck would still like be questionable because they draw evenly matched like 40% of the time. So even then you only have a 60% win rate, and to like top an event or win an event, your win rate has to be way higher than that. It's just I don't really see these like stun decks really haven't been viable in like many years, and I really don't think that getting T King back and like Torrential matters a lot more I think than any of the other ones, but I really don't think getting like T King back and like Inspector Border is cool, but it's pretty. I think that's actually like the coolest card for this deck, but like there are just way too many spells and traps that like get rid of a bunch of back row that like it's I really don't think that stun is really gonna be like a viable deck ever again.
Ever.